So today we're going to look at the events of September 11th, 2001. We want to really get into the facts of what happened that morning.
Yes, focusing on the structures that were targeted, the engineering, and of course the immediate human response.
The scale of it is just immense.
It is. We're talking about 4 commercial planes hijacked at the same time, hitting these huge symbols of American economic and military power. New York, Washington, D.C., and then a field in Pennsylvania.
So let's start with the World Trade Center. The Twin Towers in Lower Manhattan. Everyone knows they were massive, but what made them such a powerful symbol and I guess such a unique target from a structural point of view?
Well, they were a huge statement of economic confidence. The North Tower was finished in '72, the South in '73, and they were just enormous, over 1,360 feet tall.
And the architect, Minoru Yamasaki, he designed them to be more than just office buildings.
Absolutely. The whole idea was to maximize the internal space, to create these huge open floors.
And that gets to the core of the engineering, right? The bundled tube design. How can we explain that simply?
Sure, think of a normal skyscraper. It has a sort of skeleton of columns all through the inside.
Okay.
The World Trade Center was different. Most of the support came from a really dense grid of steel columns on the outside walls, and then the central core where the elevators and utilities were.
Ah, so the strength was on the perimeter and in the middle?
Exactly. And that's what allowed for those vast open plan offices, no columns getting in the way.
So what connected the outer walls to that inner core?
The floors themselves. They were built with these lightweight steel trusses, almost like a web of steel beams.
Okay.
And these trusses were so important, they held the floors up, of course, but they also tied the whole structure together, the core and the exterior. It made the building act like one single solid unit. A brilliant system, but as we'll see, it had a specific weakness.
Which brings us to the timeline of the attacks. The first plane, it hit the North Tower at 8:46 in the morning.
That's right, American Airlines Flight 11. It hit high up, between the 93rd and 99th floors.
A catastrophic impact. It must have just ripped through those outer columns.
It did. It tore apart the exterior columns and damaged the central core right at that spot. But the building actually stood. It absorbed that initial energy.
But the real damage wasn't from the impact itself. It was the fire that came after.
Exactly right. The crash did 2 critical things. First, it destroyed the stairwells and the water pipes for the fire sprinklers, which trapped everyone above the impact zone.
No way out and no way to fight the fire.
And second, and this is structurally the most important point, the force of the explosion stripped away the fireproofing material that was sprayed on all the steel.
So that protective layer was just gone, exposing the raw steel to the jet fuel fire.
Precisely. But we need to be clear here, the jet fuel didn't melt the steel. That's a huge misconception.
It just didn't need to.
No. The fires were maybe 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Not hot enough to melt steel, but absolutely hot enough to weaken it. Unprotected steel loses about 90% of its strength at those temperatures.
And that's where the failure really began.
It is. Those lightweight floor trusses, now exposed to the heat, started to sag. And as they sagged, they pulled the exterior columns inward.
Creating this immense pressure on the outer walls.
Enormous pressure. Eventually, those perimeter walls buckled. And that triggered what's called a progressive collapse.
A chain reaction.
Yeah. Then, 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., the second plane hits the South Tower.
And that's the moment everyone watching on TV saw it live, the moment the world knew this was not an accident.
It was a coordinated attack. That plane hit lower, between the 77th and 85th floors, and it hit at an angle, not straight on.
And even though it was hit second, the South Tower actually collapsed first, at 9:59 a.m.
Right, and that was likely because of the angle of the impact. It probably damaged the support systems unevenly, creating an imbalance that led to a faster failure.
The North Tower held on longer until 10:28 a.m.
But the result was the same. The heat did its work, and that same progressive collapse happened. Both towers just gone, reduced to rubble.
The scene in Manhattan must have been absolute chaos. We talk about the destruction, but we have to talk about the response of the first responders.
Unbelievable bravery. Police, firefighters.
Yeah.
They were rushing into the burning towers.
As thousands of people were rushing out.
Imagine that. Climbing dozens of flights of stairs, carrying, 80, 90 pounds of gear, hoses, oxygen tanks, trying to get up to the fire while directing all these terrified people to safety down the same narrow stairwells.
It's almost impossible to even imagine that kind of physical and mental effort.
It really is. And hundreds of them, so many from the fire department of New York, were still inside, still trying to save people when the towers came down.
It was a conscious sacrifice.
It was. And all around the site, you had paramedics and doctors setting up triage centers on the street, dealing with the survivors. Just an incredible response.
And while all of this was happening in New York, the attacks were continuing elsewhere.
Right. This takes us to Arlington, Virginia, the Pentagon. At 9:37 a.m., a third plane, American Airlines Flight 77, hits the western side of the building.
The headquarters of the U.S. Department of Defense. Another huge symbol.
A symbol of military power. But the structure itself was completely different from the World Trade Center.
How so?
Well, the Pentagon is a much older building from World War II. It's a low, sprawling structure made of reinforced concrete, much more robust in some ways.
And crucially, the part of the building that was hit had just been renovated.
That's a key detail. That section had been reinforced with steel beams, blast-resistant windows, and a lot more support columns.
So that reinforcement made a difference.
A huge difference. It slowed the collapse and helped contain the fire, which gave people more time to get out. The case where, preparing for one kind of threat actually helped mitigate a completely different one.
And then there's the fourth plane, United Airlines Flight 93.
This is just an incredible story of civilian heroism. The plane was heading for Washington, D.C., probably for the White House or the Capitol.
But the passengers and crew, they started making phone calls.
Right. They learned what was happening in New York and at the Pentagon. They realized their plane wasn't just a plane anymore. It was a guided missile.
And they decided to fight back.
They did. They organized a counterattack to try and retake the cockpit. We know this from the cockpit voice recorder and from phone calls. We heard them say, "Let's roll."
They charged the cockpit.
The evidence shows they did. And during that struggle, the hijackers crashed the plane into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
They chose to sacrifice themselves to prevent an even greater tragedy.
They absolutely did. Their actions almost certainly saved hundreds, maybe thousands of lives in Washington, D.C. It's just a profound act of bravery.
The global reaction to all of this was immediate.
Instantaneous.
Yeah.
There was this huge wave of solidarity from around the world. And it was a global tragedy in a very real sense. People from over 60 different countries died at the World Trade Center.
And it changed everything, especially travel.
Oh, completely. Air travel shut down for days. And when it came back, it was a different world. That's when we got the TSA, the Transportation Security Administration.
Hardened cockpit doors, taking your shoes off at security, the limits on liquids.
All of that stems directly from this day. It was a fundamental shift in global security.
Back in New York, the site became known as Ground Zero, and the cleanup was just a monumental task.
We're talking millions of tons of debris. The recovery and cleanup operation lasted for 8 months. And the fires, deep in the rubble, they actually burned for more than 90 days.
And the health impact on the first responders from all that toxic dust? That's a whole other tragic story that unfolded for years.
A terrible long-term crisis. But eventually the city moved from recovery to remembrance.
And rebuilding?
Yes. The 9/11 Memorial and Museum is there now. Where the tower stood, there are 2 enormous reflecting pools recessed into the ground.
The footprints of the towers.
Exactly. And the names of every victim are engraved in bronze around the edges. It's an incredibly powerful place.
And a new skyscraper stands there now.
One World Trade Center. It's a statement of resilience. And its height is symbolic 1,776 feet for the year of American independence.
You know, when you look back, the attacks really exposed all these vulnerabilities, but the story of that day is also defined by such incredible courage.
Absolutely. The courage of first responders running into danger and the courage of ordinary people fighting back in the sky. It truly reshaped our world, forcing us to ask this really difficult question. How do you stay an open society while also protecting against these huge coordinated threats?
It's a question we're still dealing with.
We are.
Thank you for joining us for this look at the factual and structural reality of September 11th. The attacks really did have a lasting impact on global politics and travel security. Something to think about is, considering the focus on global cooperation that followed, what ways do you see security and international alliances in the world today that stem directly from these events?
Good luck with your studies.